So far, we created lots of dummy flows. Now, we are almost getting to the end of the course, so let's make something a bit more useful, something that really solves a business problem. So, for the Office forms, I decided to create a custom list in SharePoint. Then I want to create a form in Office forms that matches the fields in the list. Then I want to create a flow that captures the fields from forms and submits it to SharePoint. And now you may think, okay, what's the point? I mean, people can go directly to SharePoint and submit their records. Yes and no. The trick is that SharePoint Online does not allow anonymous users. So we want people to submit records to this list without really having an AD account or without really logging into anything. So they can come to this form and they can access this form without any username and password. When they submit the form should go to this list that requires authentication. And that's the job of our flow. Now, let's start by creating a custom list inside SharePoint. This is my SharePoint site. I click on the settings and I add an app. And this app is going to be custom list. I want to call it Forms Demo. And I just create it. By default, it has only title. But I want to add a few more fields. So I add another field as city, single line of text, and I add another column called age, which is going to be a number. There we go. And I again click on save. So basically, we should be able to capture a title, city, and age. Let's say this title is going to be the combination of first name and last name, that I will get both of them from the form. And then I will capture also city and age, and I insert it into this demo form. So far, we created a custom list in SharePoint. Now we need to create a forms in the Office forms that matches the fields that we have in the list. So I go to forms.office.com and I want to create a new form. This new form, I call it send to SharePoint. And now I want to add the new question, which is going to be the text. The first question is going to be first name. The second question is going to be, again, text. It's going to be last name. Next question is going to be another text, which is going to be city. And another question, I want to pick text, and this question is going to be age. And just for this one, I just want to make every single one of them required. So last name required, city required, and age is also required. So we have this form. We can make some changes. For example, we want to make it a little bit cooler looking. Maybe we pick a theme for it. And the most important part is that if I click on this drop down and I go to the setting, I want to make sure that anyone with a link can respond to this form. This is the important part. Otherwise, it's not going to serve the purpose, because we want to have people to come and submit this form without any authentication information. So we're good, and then I just keep it the way it is. The only thing is that I need to remember that the title of this form is Send to SharePoint. So far, we are done with creating a form in Office Forms that matches the list field. Now it's time to go to the sweet part, which is creating the flow that captures these fields and inserts them into SharePoint. Let me find this form. Yeah. And this is the list that is supposed to receive the data. So let's go back to flow.microsoft.com. I want to create a new flow. Which flow shall we create? Forget about it. Just pick any one of them that you want and click on skip. So basically, when you take this approach, it gives you the chance to go through every possible trigger. And let me give it a name, and I call it form submission to SharePoint. And I need to search for the proper trigger for forms. It gives you Microsoft Forms, and there is only one trigger when a new response is submitted. Now, we need to pick up the form ID. So if I click on this drop down, we can find the send to SharePoint form. And this trigger is fired when a form is submitted, but it does not give you the fields that they have been submitted. It only gives you one thing, which is the ID of the submitted form. So this one does not have those values. Remember, everything was in something like an Excel sheet. Now we have to query that Excel sheet and capture the values that we need. So to do that, I need to add a new step, and I search for forms again, and I'm looking for the forms actions. Now, get response details is the action that queries the list of all submitted responses based on a response ID. So first we pick up the form that we're looking for, which was sent to SharePoint. And the response ID is the one that we can get it from the when response is submitted. So let me get the response ID from the trigger. And now get response details gives us all the fields that we receive from the form. Next is going to be very easy. So if we go to SharePoint, I pick SharePoint, and I need to say create item. I guess you know the rest. You don't need my help anymore. You can just pause the video and finish it yourself. But regardless, I pick up the SharePoint site that I have. It was Power Automate Workshop. List name is going to be Forms Demo. And as soon as I select it, it picks up everything. Title, it's supposed to be first name and last name. So I add first name, space, last name. City, I can pick the city from the form, and the age, you do not see it here because age in SharePoint is a number and form does not have the data type. Of course, if I search for age, I will find it here and I can add it, but the proper way of doing it is casting the age to the value that the type matches here. So basically, I need to go to expression, and I need to type int, open the bracket, and then I go back to the previous tab, and now I can find the age. So we capture the age, we convert it to integer, and then we assign it to age. So I click on OK, and now age has the proper data with the proper type. I click on save, and we're all good. Let's give it a shot and see how it works. Let me click on this back to previous page so I can see the run history. So let's go back to the Microsoft Forms. So to submit this form, now it is in the design mode. I click on the preview. Now I can submit the values. First name is going to be Ali Reza. Last name is going to be Ali Obadi. City is going to be Mississauga. And age is going to be 47. And I click on submit. It's happy, but did it really work on our flow side? Be careful. This one takes it independently. So even if the flow has error, this form does not show you anything. So let's go back to the Power Automate. Let's refresh it. and see if we got it. Yes, we got the execution. And if I click on it, seems like all the actions were successful. Now, if I go to the list, you see the first name, last name are concatenated as a title, city, and age. Let's give it another shot. So I go back here, submit another response. Gazanfer, last name Jackson, city is gonna be Toronto, and the age is gonna be 34. There we go. Let's submit this guy too and see if it works. Again, I go back to SharePoint, refresh, and we have the second person here. So this way we managed to bypass the authentication for only authenticated users to submit values to SharePoint to a form that does not require any authentication, anonymously accessible, and users can fill it and submit it and will receive the content inside SharePoint. Of course, you can go for a lot more complex examples, but I think for this beginner level course, this much is more than enough.